Welcome to PVPN. I am your local realtor and host, Joe Alessi, and today we have the coaches from the Palos Verdes and Peninsula High School baseball teams. We're going to delve into their backgrounds as well as into their program. If you love what you're seeing today, thank you for tuning in, and please subscribe to the channel. It's March 5th. We're early in the season. We've got some non-league games under our belt. And today I've got Nick Green, Alex Morales with me today to talk about coaching in general for the high schools here on the peninsula, as well as the health of their sport, what it's like for the Bay League and how they see things playing out for their season, and hopefully, obviously, some playoff aspirations. You guys have had to deal with a lot of weather early on this year. We had, a lot of rainouts, juggling your schedules. So that's one thing that, we haven't had for many years with the drought going on. But talk to me, just introduce yourselves first off. Tell me a little bit about your background. I know you're a South Bay kid growing up, and you are from out of state, and you are newer to the South Bay. And let me just say, I have the privilege today, this is the first time these guys are meeting, which is really exciting for me. So it's nice because normally you have the coaches up here and they've battled before and they know each other from their younger years and stuff. So Alex, just touch on again your background a little bit, how you got into coaching, and what led you to the job at Palos Verdes High, which you've been to for about 5 years now, right?
Yep. I grew up in the South Bay, like you mentioned. I went to North High School, played ball there, and in LA Harbor for 2 years. Went and played at a small school in Missouri after that, and started helping out as coaching our college JV team. Enjoyed that a lot, and I knew I was done playing. My arm was done, and I didn't have any chance of playing pro ball or anything like that.
Were you a pitcher?
I was.
Okay.
Came back home, and North High needed a pitching coach, and jumped on that, worked out, and the rest is history, basically. I started subbing and coaching there. Moved up to Oregon, coached up there for 4 or 5 years, had kids, came back down to be with the family, started teaching and coaching at PV High. So tell us about that. So when that job opened up, it just kind of fell into your lap, or were you kind of pursuing it? Tell us a little bit about how that... So at that point, Coach Fujinaga was still the head coach at PV High, and I'd known him well. I'd played with him in college. And Derek Nicholson was helping out as well, and he was also a teammate of mine. So we all knew each other. When D-Nick was still playing pro ball at that point and went back to Texas, I think he was in Texas at that point at Grand Prairie. When he went back, I jumped in to help coaching. And then that summer, the Spanish teacher at PV High left. She was a softball coach, and she left for Florida pretty late in the summer, like in late July, early August. So they were looking for a Spanish teacher immediately, and I had my credential, and it worked out perfectly.
Great.
And I started teaching there and coaching there, and that was in 2009. Coached there until 15, took a year off, went to Penn, coached there for a couple years.
You have a lot of crossover, happens a lot.
It was a lot of fun. Great group of guys over there, and spent the 2 years there, and then the job opened up at PV High, and took it. And
so you didn't have to go through a grueling interview process, competing against other people? Did you just slide right into this thing, or what?
So yeah, funny you mentioned that. It wasn't grueling, but it was an interesting process. So they didn't ask me, but the job opened up, and I applied and everything. And our principal at the time left before I got hired. So there was no principal. So I was running the summer camp, and there was no principal for, 2-3 weeks, and it was kind of in limbo, and I couldn't do certain things because I didn't have the official title. Then they allowed the AD and the assistant principal to make the call, do the interviewing, and went through that process and got hired.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Nick, welcome to the South Bay.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So same thing, tell us about your upbringing in the sport, how it led to you coaching and getting the job, and how that process went for you.
So I was originally raised in New Jersey, born and raised up there. My grandfather happened to coach Little League Baseball for 35 years in the community. So I think, baseball has just always been in my blood. My father played into college, and he had an injury because he was a two-sport athlete in wrestling and baseball, and hurt his shoulder. So I just always want to be like my father. I think like a lot of boys want to be like their father. So fell into baseball and had a passion for it, and played all the way up until freshman year of college. Just happened to have an arm injury myself and a back injury, so I realized I wasn't the player that I used to be. And
that was in Jersey or Georgia?
I was actually in Georgia, yeah. I moved down to Georgia, and I played most of my high school ball down there in college. And after that wrapped up, I was like, I never wanted to see the sport again. I thought done, injury, and I was out of it. And it wasn't until 3 or 4 years I was out of baseball and going to school to get my degree in film and television.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Worked out here in LA, perfect spot for that, for film. And
so that's what brought you out here,
that's what brought me out to
career?
LA, that career. And then happened to be, on the weekends, I happened to just be going to a local Little League just to check out games, and I realized that, wow, these boys need a little bit of help. And so I happened to just put my name on the concession stand and ask if any coaches needed to have any help or wanted an assistant, or I just wanted to be involved. I wanted to give back. And one of the coaches reached out to me and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you on staff." And
at Penn?
No, at this Little League that I was coaching at. And within 2 weeks, he gives me a whole bunch of binders with parents' names, information on players. He goes, "Here you go. I'm going to watch my boys play high school." So here I am, 2 weeks into Little League, and I'm going, okay. So it just started from there, and I happened to work on that Little League team. I coached there at North Venice Little League for 4 years about, and I ran into two umpires who happened to be coaches themselves in the Southern LA area, Tyrone Powell and Carlos Cruz, and they kind of gave me, they were like my mentors, gave me opportunities at NMO Venice Leadership. Carlos Cruz did for 2 years, and then he was good friends with Tyrone Powell, who's the AD and the coach over at Windward, and he gave me an opportunity to be the pitching coach there because I was a pitcher as well, like Morales. And so we happened to go really far that year and have a great year. And then after that, there was a coaching change at Windward, and I tried to get a job there as the head, and it was a long interview process and just missed out on it. So I looked for other opportunities but couldn't find any, and then kind of went back to why I came out here. I went back into film and sports media, and it wasn't until 2020, the pandemic hit, that I wasn't doing anything. I was at home working, and my girlfriend was telling me, "Go out, you need to get out of the house." And so I happened to...
She was tired of seeing you.
She was very tired of seeing me. Happened to sit there and just go, "Hey, you go out and do baseball. Like, you need to do something that's fun again." I think all of us were just kind of living a little bit scared and sheltered. And so I happened to respond to an ad on Craigslist with coaching need with Mason Morioka, who's a South Bay, I would say, legend. A lot of people know him, and he's coached so many people in the South Bay. And we happened to have a former player that we had a connection to, and brought me into his organization, and valued me as a coach, and kind of wrote my letter of recommendation for when the Penn job came open. And so I owe him a lot of thanks, and another mentor of mine, and and that's how I arrived at Penn.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love, listen, all careers, it's nice when you have someone that's doing what you love to do and they're able to guide you and help you, mentoring. I love that. Let's talk about the health of the sport a little bit because, again, I'm from the area. As a kid, I went to Rolling Hills Little League and then Merrill-Less High School when it was on the hill as a high school. But back then, I was late 70s, I was at Rolling Hills Little League, and back then, again, baseball was the sport. You didn't have lacrosse. Right. Soccer was, AYSO was around, people were doing it. Today, there's a lot more competition for the athletes, a lot more, opportunities, and people are gravitating towards lacrosse, more people playing soccer, and I find less people playing multiple sports. You kind of specialize nowadays. So, talk about, what you're seeing coming up from the Little League level and Pony League levels before they get to high school, how they're prepped for you, and just the health of your sport in general, where you see it going, and some of the challenge you may be facing today.
Well, I think the challenges are what you mentioned there, right? We're competing with other sports, not to mention social media and all the other stuff that are taking kids in different directions, or not even alternate sports, just different opportunities that are out there. Having said that, though, I still think the numbers are pretty strong. The players are better than we were, I think. Physically, I think they're faster and stronger. I think it's unfortunate that they're specializing at such a young age. I would love to see all the kids play as many sports as they could for as long as they can. I think there's a lot of skills and benefits that they could pick up from that, especially with an 8 to 10-year-old trying to pigeonhole him as a left-handed reliever or something. It gets ridiculous. So that's something I would like to see more of is guys playing more sports. Like, we encourage our guys, go play football. I mean, one, you're going to get sick of hearing me for 4 years. And two, you pick up different skills and different, find out different things about yourself, what you like and what you don't like. But the other thing is all these new rule changes in the MLB will be interesting too, and what that does for our game and how that trickles down to college and then high school and amateurs, little league and travel ball.
Right. Biggest challenge for you that you're seeing just in the sport in general is kids coming up and dealing with other things that they have going on in their lives? And
I think probably the greatest problem is just, there's, I think what Alex touched on is that the players are better today than I think even my day or before. There's just better coaching out there. There's more coaching. There's technology that we're able to now kind of utilize and to get guys to become better athletes as well as taking care of their arm. I mean, like, we've just gotten better at it. And I think that that's trickled down at all sports. And now, you're wanting that same high school coach to be at that level that maybe your club coach is, or at a level that maybe you're playing on a select team or something like that. And I think that's where it gets a little bit, I think it gets complicated for high school coaches because a lot of the high school coaches that are out in the area are, they're teachers. They've got full-time jobs, and baseball is not their main priority. And so, from a parent perspective, I think it puts a lot of heat on coaches, and I mean, even for umpires. Like, we're seeing an umpire shortage now because of parents being so heated and
they don't want to take the abuse.
Yeah,
is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, they don't want to take the abuse, and so I think that that's a part of our game that I would like to see get changed, or for there to be more acceptance to of that. Although it's very competitive and we want to have a competitive environment, that it doesn't need to be so cutthroat. That it's a game at the end of the day, and a lot of these kids are, this might be it. I mean, 6 to 7% of these players are going to end up playing in college. The rest of them, this is 4 years of their fun.
Yep.
So I'm recalling now when I played back in high school, from the dugout, you were allowed to yell quite a bit of stuff, right? The guy's on the mound or the hitter's up, and you want to try to get in their head, right? What limitations are placed on your guys now from the dugout? What can they do and not do?
I mean, for my end, I try to tell our guys, make it about us. I grew up in a time, maybe it's still in that old school of that, we shouldn't be chirping at another team. I think that it's, I don't know. I just don't think it's right in the game. I think that you can have competitive spirit and you can have little chants and stuff for your players, and, the usual, maybe a little bit of chirps about, something that happens at play. But when it gets to be where two teams are chirping at it and it's getting crossing those boundaries, that to me is something that I just think is no place in right in the game. So for us, we just try to make it about us, try to be mentally tough, because if I can already get in your head and rattle you, then I've broken you.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then, things can go downhill fast.
Yes. And that's definitely part of the game. I actually remember I was pitching at Maricosta, and the band Missing Persons, they had a song, Nobody Walks in LA. And this parent, of all things, was in the stands just grilling me, just with that theme of Nobody Walks in LA. And I was having he totally got in my head, and I'll never forget that. So yes, we all deal with that. Do you put personal limitations on your guys, or are there rules that are in place that what they can and can't say?
There's rules in place, and the umpires have gotten much better about warning teams and keeping an eye on the bench jockeying. The chirping that I've heard, it's a lost art. They don't know what they're doing. They're just saying things and for shock value, basically. It's not subtle. It's not creative. It's not witty. So if it was, maybe we'd let it go. But for now, it's the same approach. It's stay on our guys.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about captains. Talk about the role of the captains of your team, how many you got, who they are, and how you went about choosing them.
That's a great question and difficult for me to answer. Believe it or not, we don't have captains.
Oh,
no.
interesting.
We don't have captains. We try to empower every player in the program, and everyone is a leader, and everyone has captain duties, captain responsibilities. Talk a lot about right and wrong, doing what's right and understanding why we're doing it, or if it's not right or wrong, good idea, bad idea. And we want our quote-unquote worst player in the program, whoever that is, to feel empowered enough to tell whoever our best player is that, hey, they're out of line or they're doing something wrong or something needs to be taken care of. So it's a little bit different, but that we went away from the captain's model for that reason. And also, in the past, it becomes sort of a popularity thing. Or they either vote for who they think is the best player or just who they think is the coolest and not necessarily the best leader.
Right.
So we've tried this new approach where, hey, everyone's a captain, everyone's a leader, and that way everyone's responsible for what we're trying to accomplish.
Nice. Yeah, when you let me sit into your practice the other day and observe, I was sitting there in the dugout as you were addressing the team, and I almost felt like I was 17 again. Like nothing has changed. It's the same thing. It's right. You're trying to motivate them at the same time, tell them what you would like to see change and things like that. So it was really interesting to be there. Now, same with you with the captains, or do you have captains?
So we do. We do have our 4 captains that we have on varsity is Jack Gold, who is our player voted captain. We went with the coaches selected 3 coaches, captains, players that we thought in the program that exemplified leadership, whether it to be vocally or just lead by example. And those players for us were Caleb Woodward, Reed Woodland, and Tommy Phillips. So we have 3 seniors in the outfield that all have a different way of showing leadership. They're all 3 have different personalities, and it's fun seeing how they interact with our freshmen and how they lead. And then we have Reed, our captain behind the dish, who's just been a great guy in our program, a guy who got a concussion last year, wasn't able to play that much, and so this season he's really just exemplified leadership all the way through for morning workouts, helping out with the freshmen, helping out the catching group. So we've got guys in our program that take captainship, seriously, and not just for our varsity team, but our whole program in general.
Excellent. I wanted to talk about practice a little bit because observing, it seems to me like today there's a lot more protections in place, a lot of nets up to protect the players as you're doing batting practice, people moving into different parts of the field, working on some things. So how has the practice setting changed since you used to play as a kid versus today? And do you find, are there still challenges there? Because baseball tends to be a sport where even in practice, I found from the past that there's a lot of idle time, downtime. One kid's getting to hit and the other 9 guys are sitting in the field just waiting for something to come to them. So is that a juggling act to try to find a balance so the whole team is benefiting during those 3 hours or so that you're practicing? And how has practice evolved for you?
Definitely. I would say trying my best to figure out how to get 60 plus guys to all get good work in. I've been a head coach for various different programs, but just a team, so maybe 20 kids. When you have 60 guys, one field, it becomes a lot to sit there and try to create a practice that everyone gets beneficial work, and it puts in a good day and feels that that they improved. And so luckily I have a guy, one of our assistants, John Handgarter at JV, has been there for 20 plus years, and since he was able to finish up basketball season and come into baseball season, he's just helped us so much with practice plans and how to make the most use out of all teams and the field. I'm only as good as my staff. I say that a lot. They help me so much with how to get the best out of our players in our program. So from when I played, it's not too much different. We had kind of the same situation. We had about 60 guys, one field. Sometimes we'd go over to the softball field if if they were playing a game away. But other than that, your freshmen sometimes are in the cages a little bit, while JV and varsity gets the field. And, we try to get, freshmen involved in the field when guys have games or if we're, trying to get some work hitting wise. But we try to capitalize as much as we can on the time.
Beautiful. I'm Joe Alessi. I am a broker associate with RE/MAX Estate Properties. So the beauty of our industry is consumers have choices all over the place. What they don't know when it comes to real estate is what to really look for. So things that they should think about is looking for someone that will do the little things. I will lose a deal before I allow someone to do something that's not going to benefit them. I've been with RE/MAX Estate Properties about 11 years now. The clientele I work with can be very vast, from someone buying their first home, of course, to someone upsizing their home. Could be a lot of different things that they're looking for. A lot of people love to say they go the extra mile. You'll hear that all the time. I am not afraid to get my hands dirty around the house. And under the house, go into an electrical panel myself or climb on somebody's roof. It could be anywhere. I tend to become friends with many of the people I work with. This is not a one and done type of business. This is a lifelong relationship once it starts. A lot of times today we see private coaching going on.
Yeah.
So is it hard for you to get into the nitty gritty with someone, whether it's your pitcher or your catcher, whoever, where you're really setting aside to say, hey, we need to work on this technique? Do you have the time for that? Or are you also finding that people that really are pursuing the sport, they're still going on the side with some private lessons of some kind? How are you blending the two of that together?
Yeah, it's a new challenge that we're dealing with now, right? The days of my way or the highway are gone. Yeah, it's a balance of guys playing with multiple players or coaches and players from all over the area. They all know each other. I think it's a good thing. I think for us, it's communication. Make sure that, if you threw in a bullpen, that we're not throwing you a bullpen the very next day, or if you threw in a game in the fall or something, we're not using you the very next day. There's that, and then just the flow of information out there. They can find anything anywhere, right? And the one thing that we sort of preach, if you will, is, hey, find out what works for you. There's a million different methods, right? And then once the season starts, we get closer to the season, we dial it down to what we do here, and hey, this may not be the only way, this may not be the way it's done wherever, but this is our way here, and this is what we're going to adhere to and go about it this way. And if you move on and play somewhere else and the coach tells you to do it differently, it's the same time. It's not, hey, well, this is not how I did it in my high school. Hey, this is a different program, different way of doing it. Not necessarily more right or more wrong than any other.
Yeah, I noticed you guys wear a lot of hats. Again, as I'm observing, I don't know if this is just a type A personality that you guys have, but I noticed, you're out there grooming the infield before practice. You got the hose out, you're watering it down,
yeah.
You're taking the equipment out. Is that something that all coaches have to do these days, or is that just something that you like to do because you enjoy it? Or
I think in the baseball world, it's definitely something the baseball guys got to do. If you're going to do it right, you're going to be out there. I was on our field this morning, right before we came over here. It took a beating with the weather that we had in the last couple of weeks, so we needed to get some stuff done, and Sunday was the only opportunity to do it. So go out there. But at the same time, I do enjoy being out there.
Yeah, because the field, it's a sacred place almost,
yeah.
Right? You treat it as your mother, so to speak. You want to, as your child, you want to make sure it's okay, and you're out there. So I totally understand that. One thing I wanted to talk about was prepping for the next game, because in other sports like football, there's one game a week. Yeah. And a lot of times you'll get film, you could really study the other team. But in baseball, obviously, you've got multiple games during the week. You're bouncing around. Again, you're dealing with weather and things like that. How are you prepping for the next team? Do you have a scout that goes out and physically watches them before? Do you get any film? How does that process work for you?
I mean, I think nowadays, it's just with social media, it's just opened up the box more of the content that you can get out there and receive on a kid, whether it be through Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, other places of media that just showcase, video of a player, because some of these players are trying to put their film out there to try to get to college and to try to show coaches. So I know for me, we don't send anybody out to games. If I go to a game, I like to just go out there and to actually enjoy it as a fan. I know a lot of these boys that are out in the South Bay. I've coached them. They've been in our facility. I've been a trainer for them. So I just like to enjoy watching them and they're, performing their artwork. But if I'm preparing for anybody, for us, it's usually done days, maybe night of, just on the computer.
Because you'll get a lineup.
Oh yeah.
Right, at least a day. What, a day ahead of time or 2 days? What's typically the?
We just find we look at guys' team roster and generally.
You'll know who the pitcher will be.
Yeah, we know what guys are pitchers, what guys are hitters. I've always said, on a high school team, you have on a good one, maybe 3 guys that really know how to hit. Everyone else is just a blind squirrel trying to find an acorn. So, you look at those 3 guys and go, what is something that we can, do this guy? What's something that we see that, maybe he's having trouble with? And it's the same thing with pitchers, just seeing, what does he have in his, inventory? Is he a guy who's, got some tail on his ball, some run? Is it flat? Is he have, something that's more of a 12-6? A lot of vertical break or horizontal break with the slider. And, we just try to get as much data points so that way we can tell our guys and so they have, a plan of attack and our approach for the game. We just, at least the way that we have things done at Penn is we just try to give all the boys the best information we can and then try to give them a good plan of attack and go out there and play ball. For us, it's just try and guide sheep. We're not trying to sit there and do anything.
Good visual.
Like that. Yeah.
Any scouting for you of any kind going on? Whether you have a dedicated person kind of checking teams out, or?
Yeah, a little bit. We have some older coaches that are old school and they want to go out with the charts and try to catch them. It's just so hard that, it happens every season. One of our coaches will go out and the game got canceled or the game got moved, and it's it's tough. And like you mentioned, football, we don't exchange film. We're not filming every game or anything like that. Maybe you can find some clips of individual highlights, but. For the most part, yeah, we worry about our guys, making sure that they're prepared, and then just whether we already seen a player before in previous seasons or another coach that said, hey, they do this or something. Just try to minimize any surprises, whether it's lineup-wise, pitching-wise, or field-wise. That's one thing is try to get them prepared for the field. For example, we played at Sonora a couple years ago. Got word that they had a farm right behind right field. And that's a little bit of a surprise. And sure enough, we got out there and there was a bunch of animals and the smell was, and it was good. It didn't catch our guys off guard, and it wasn't, because if it does, that's the one thing they're gonna be talking about for 25 minutes before game time. It's like, hey, we try to minimize any distraction.
Cool. Again, observing your practice, one of your coaches was talking about Rod Carew.
Yeah.
Obviously one of the all-time greatest hitters from the Angels, and how he was in a slump.
Right.
And at that time, you guys started off 0-3 this year. And so there was a lot of, no one likes to lose, and you're dealing with all that. And he was talking about how Rod bunted. He said, I'm not gonna swing the bat until I get a bunt single. And he ended up getting 4 bunt singles in that game, right?
Wow.
Which was great. And then I bring this up too because when you guys were playing Torrance, I do recall it was a 0-0 game. And you guys had runners on second and third, I believe, and 2 outs. And you bunted. And you had you successfully bunted and ended up winning that game 1-0 and scored on that bunt. So
we did.
You definitely got to see it in real life, how it worked. And
yeah, it worked out in that game. Like you said, that we scored a run. And that was Camel on his own, laying that bunt down. Funny enough, though, the day before, we had a bunt single as well. And didn't score a run on that play, but the very next play, the third baseman, the very next time that kid was up to bat, the third baseman scooted all the way in. It was in front of the bag, and that batter hit a ground ball down the line. That would have been a routine ground ball otherwise, but because he had moved him in, it ended up being a double, and then that was the run that scored to win that game.
Listen, and it's ringing in my head. Again, I coached my boys when they were in Little League, and that's where I met Dan Spring. I think Dan, great trainer of the Little League level and a friend of mine. And one of the things that he tries to instill in players is just put the ball in play.
Yep.
Just get it in play. I don't care how you do it, right? Don't want you to walking back to the dugout just looking at some third strike, right? You just get, because you never know what's going to happen.
Especially in high school.
Yeah.
You know, make them play catch, make them make the plays.
Yeah. So I noticed you guys both coach third base. Now, is that common with all coaches? Is it just coincidental you guys are both coaching third?
I think that that's just something that most head coaches, take the third base box because you're the one that's making those calls, and you kind of let it ride on you making those calls. Now, I know there's some coaches that are older and maybe been in the program long enough, and they'll have somebody else go out there at third base box. But usually it's going to be the head guy at third.
Do you ever see other programs that have one of the kids out there coaching the base at all, or
never on the varsity level? Okay. No. Occasionally, a first base coach will be a player, but majority of the time it's two coaches. At lower levels for sure. We see that, and in the fall as well.
And that kind of brings me to the signs. That's the one beauty of the game of baseball. Giving signs and taking signs and all of that. So. Not to give away any trade secrets, of course, right? You don't want to give your tell or anything, but. Is a lot of that tend to be for show? Or, I mean, is every pitch something that you're trying to tell guys something on the base path or in the batter's box?
More often than not, it's for show, right? I mean, there's not a play called every single pitch. When there is, it's pretty, I would say, difficult to pick. You'd have to be pretty dialed in every single time on a guy to try to get those signs. There's systems in place to make them tough to pick, but I would say pitch to pitch, there's not a play called every single time.
Yeah, no, agreement. It's for show, but it's the having to continually do it so that way when you do put something on, then. It's not obvious. If you're sitting there and you don't do it for, every batter, and then you have a situation where finally a guy gets on and now you want to do the signs, now you might as well be saying, hey, it's one of these three options that we're going here, and everyone cue in. So, the beauty of signs is, being able to have the attention to detail to do it all the time. A lot of guys that we have in the program, having to tell them, hey, look at me before you get in that box. Because if you just get in that box, then it's just, well, great. And then we fall into that same routine of where, now they're going to know when I put something on because I'm not doing all the other times when there's not. So,
Right. All of a sudden you have to yell at the kid, hey, step out of the box.
You might as well draw all 25 eyes.
You've lost the opportunity to put something on.
Right. Earlier you kind of touched on rule changes. And so that kind of brings me to that. I mean, the time factor of a baseball game is a big thing today, even at the major league level. There's some big rule changes this year about how many times or throwing to first base when a runner's on, things like that, and so forth. So was that what you were referring to, how it filters down from the major league level, or was there a specific?
No, that's it right there. It's the time clock on the pitching, the picks, the stepping out of the batter's box, those rule changes. I mean, it's going to be interesting, and how that plays out at that level will definitely impact us down the line at some point. And we'll see. I know I've gone to plenty of college games where I'm just bored. They're 4-hour games sometimes, and you got a guy micromanaging every single pitch, every single play, and it's like 30 seconds plus. Now with this, like 7 seconds, you got to be in the box.
Wow.
Like, I'm not even sure how they're going to get signed in.
And listen, come playoff time, maybe you take a little extra time. Obviously, every little pitch seems to be more magnified, but early in the season, you want to see things moving along a little bit. I remember going back to that Torrance game you guys just played, their pitcher was going to first a lot. A lot. And then faking to third, and your guys were getting on him a little bit in the dugout. It was kind of fun, but it was getting old. It's like, okay, are you afraid to go to the plate, or was it a strategy? So it's nice to see the game rolling along, because
I think there was 17 or 24 picks in the first 3 innings or something like that. But it worked. I mean, we weren't able to run on him.
Right. So. He did.
24 picks, tiring that runner going back and forth. It did what they were supposed to do, if that was their intent. So
So let's talk about equipment. Obviously, things don't change much. You've got the baseball, and I know that there was the era of the major leagues where they thought the ball was juiced and it was getting hit out of the park a lot more today. But I think it's the bat is really what you can see changing the game. So talk about the bat today. What kids gravitate towards, if there is a weight of the bat, a particular brand, or what are the kids gravitating to, and how has that changed the game, if any?
I think that you're just seeing guys now that are, bats have just gotten more, I would say, my time, they didn't have as much pop as they have now. Right. Before my time, there was more pop in that bat, and they deadened it. But, I think that you're seeing a standard, for high school players, usually using about a 33-30, drop 3. But now you're having where it's almost like wood, where you're feeling that bats can be end loaded, balanced. I haven't seen them make much changes where, skinny handle and making too many changes with the knob. I know Warstick is a company that they've done some knob changes with the aluminum bats, but I just think that you're seeing kind of evolution of bats, trying to get closer to what wood is. But the barrels that they have now, you could hit it anywhere and you're going to get a good pop.
A sweet spot.
Yeah, whereas wood, it always gives you a true sense of how well you hit it.
Yeah.
I would love if high school eventually got back to adopting wood.
That would be great.
That would be, I think, really great for the sport. I think most guys that are in high school are swinging woodies all the time. There's tournaments that we play in the summer and the fall that kids are using them. But it's definitely different than even when I played. Barrels now are just bigger, louder, and the distance is shown as well.
Yeah, I think it's a combination as an athlete. You want the bat that's going to give you the best chance to put that ball out there and go somewhere, but because you have to worry about your stats, right? Whether it's to stay on the team or whether you're trying to go to college or show some great stats. Right. But there's also a safety factor, right? The ball coming back to the pitcher at a certain, level of velocity, things like that.
Yeah, that's the biggest. That was the biggest driving factor in the changes in the rules with the bats. It wasn't that long ago where they were -10, -7s, right? And balls were just flying off. College World Series games were 22-17 type of stuff. Yeah. And you remember that very distinct ping. Yep. The bat, and then they went through the era where they were just completely dead, right? And it was, the sweet spot was probably smaller than an actual wood bat. And I still think on a wood bat, if you hit it, it's going to go further than the bats we have now if you hit the right spot. Yeah. Obviously, larger margin for error on the aluminums. Yeah. But the safety issues with the miles per hour off the bat has been big, and even the balls have changed as well, and they're made. I don't know if they changed companies or countries or something, but they're very inconsistent. And I remember a ball would last a whole game, if not longer. And same with the practice balls. We'd be able to use buckets of practice balls all season, and now it's not very long before they get lopsided or ripped or just unplayable. Yeah. Like we busted out all our new balls February 6th or 8th, whatever it was, and by the end of that week, they didn't even look like new balls anymore.
Interesting. Well, I have to give a shout out. This is the fun thing for me, having grown up on the peninsula, where there's some crossover. As you get older, you have your own kids, and they go on to play and so forth. So you have an athlete, Alex Foreman, whose dad, Jeff, so I have to give a shout out to Jeff. So 1978, Jeff and I were on the all-star team for Rolling Hills Little League.
All right.
We may have a picture of that. We'll show you that hopefully. But it's nice to see, your own child come up right through the ranks and now playing. My own boys got to play at Rolling Hills Little League too. It's a special community that we have. And the Little Leagues, there are some phenomenal facilities that they have at that level, and it's a really cool experience for the kids, and some memories that that I still have, and I'm sure you guys have as well, that we carry forward no matter how long, right? We go on. So it's a really cool thing. And
that's what it's about, is making those memories, keeping those relationships. Right. Like we talk about this all the time, and you just mentioned a teammate from when you were a kid, right? Not even in high school. Do you remember what he hit? Do you remember his batting average or how many home runs? Nah, you don't remember any of that stuff. Right. You remember how you interacted, how they treated you, and your relationship with them. And here you are, a few years later, and you still remember that.
And that's the thing with all sports. There's life lessons that you're trying to instill in the kids, that you're talking to them, which they might not realize now, but later on they'll be able to see it, right? Which is great. Let's talk about the Bay League. Obviously, this is your first year in the Bay League. this is your sixth year going on now, but do you tend, because going back again to my day, so the Pioneer League is what Mariles used to be in, and it was Redondo, Maricosta, and El Segundo. All traditionally powerhouse schools for baseball, and I'm sure they still are. I mean, George Brett played at El Segundo, so there's a lot of history and tradition going on there. Now, of course, Costa and Redondo are in the Bay League. Do you find that it tends to be top-heavy with the teams always on the top, or is there a cyclical change? You know, you guys are fighting for the type spot with certain schools every year. Talk about the Bay League in general and what you experience.
So the leagues are up to every 2 years. They decide if they're going to keep the leagues, realign them, and there's a bunch of different ideas and systems in place, and the ADs get together and try to figure it out. And they're dealing with much more than just baseball, right? It's all the sports and all the demographics and all that. So it's an interesting deal. Right now, with the way our league is set up, it's not top heavy. It's any 6 team of the 6 teams, anyone can beat anybody, and that's the toughest part. Is we play 10 games. It's 10 league games. That's it.
You play each other 2 times, right?
Home and away, and that's it. Yeah, and it's unique for us too. Like we're starting pretty soon, and then we take a 2-week break because of spring. Because there's 3 different spring breaks for all the schools, and then we have to come back and play the next 6 games. But our league is as tough as I think just about any league in Southern California. Now with Santa Monica and Culver City in the mix, like I said, all 6 teams are really good programs, really good teams.
Excellent. Now, obviously your first year, but you guys, Penn and PV, will play each other at the end of April. Yep. Always, no matter what sport we're talking about, it's always a big day for the athletes as well as the students and even the parents, right, to get involved. So any expectations that you may have kind of coming into that game for the first time? Or?
I mean, I was born in college football rivalries. I mean, I'm a big Alabama fan. Auburn is our biggest rival, and so, like, you know, it brings out the best and worst in people.
Right.
So I expect that, you know, it's going to be loud. It's going to be noisy. It's going to be just a lot of people there, and, you know, showing support for both sides. And that's the way that you want it. You want to create the atmosphere. That's a great atmosphere for our players to be involved in, and to have so many people that care about it and are passionate about it. So, you know, we're just excited to be able to, you know, play PV and to have an opportunity to compete against those guys. You know, they're a great team led by a good coach that's, you know, taken them far just last year to the semifinals. So, you know, we're just looking to go up there and just have a great game.
Any interesting stories about the PV-Penn rivalry that you've experienced personally over these last 5 years?
It's a great question. Yeah, it's always fun playing Penn. It's, for me, I didn't grow up on the Hill, so the rivalry doesn't hit me as hard. But I know it's a big deal for the players, and it's always a fun environment. As far as rivalry goes, they've been pretty cordial, nothing crazy, and they all, like I said, they all know each other after the games. They're hugging and talking, and it's cool. I mean, at the lower levels, we had coaches that would barbecue at the end of the day, and both teams would just hang out and eat and talk about the game. And it's happened with the parents as well, where it's just, hey, there's no animosity or hard feeling type of deal. As far as interesting stories, when I was still coaching at PV and coaching at Penn, that was a pretty loud environment, and I've got an earful from a lot of people. But, you know, this is mixing up my pronouns. So while I was at Penn, we were able to win league, and we no-hit PV at their field with Nick Frost on the mound, and that was like I said, it was a special group of guys, and it was a lot of fun that year, and that was a cool moment for me, not for PV.
Right.
But yeah, and then, you know, right before COVID, we were playing at LMU. We made that a night game and made it a PV Penn LMU, and it was a fundraiser for Brett Mendoza.
Nice.
Something we were hoping to keep going, and then COVID happened, and we didn't have a game, and then couldn't make the dates work the year after. So we've shifted gears on the Brett Mendoza fundraiser, and we'll do something in the fall, tournament type deal in his honor instead of the PV Penn night game. But you know, it's always a fun week.
And one thing that we didn't have back in the day was the zoo And the Red Tide, do they tend to come out for the baseball game?
Yeah, I don't know if the zoo, and I don't if it's really a Red Tide deal. They get pretty packed, both games, both sides, and we shift the lower level games to allow more people to show up and enjoy that environment. I mean, the Red Tide guys are out there, but I don't know if it's a quote unquote Red Tide game for them.
Right.
It's late in the spring. The seniors are ready to move on.
So you mentioned Frasso,
Yeah.
which is interesting. My boys played Little League with the Frasso kids as well, and obviously one of their sons is in the Dodger organization right now. So there's a lot of kids that have gone on to success. Max Green also played at Penn High, and he's in the Detroit organization. How do you deal with, the kids that have the ability to go on to college and the aspirations? Where does your role fit into that as far as maybe helping them get connected with certain college they might want to go after? And just talk about that whole process for you and how that's played out as a coach.
So I had a moment of clarity coaching. It was probably 2013, 14, right around there. My whole thing with coaching was always getting ready for the next level, preparing for the next level, what's going on. And something happened in the game, and I remember in the dugout turning around and saying, how many of you guys even want to play at the next level? And one kid raised their hand. I was like, so what have I been doing here? Like, if there's only one of these kids that wants to move on, why am I trying to force this upon them? So I shifted gears heavily, and Nick referenced it earlier, and we just talked about it with our team. I've coached a lot of guys that have gone on to play, but I've coached way more guys whose career ended. Right, I was the last coach that they had, and this was the end of their career.
The case for most athletes.
Right, so just trying to make that an enjoyable process for them, right, as opposed to fighting them to do something that they're not even interested in doing. As far as them moving on, that game has changed a ton too. It used to be who you knew and what connections you had or who you could call and contact, and now we got guys, like during the COVID, I was getting calls about guys. And I was like, I barely know this kid. Like, he was in the program for 3 months, and then we got shut down. So I can't tell you if they know signs or how they interact with their teammates. And I can't tell you if these grades are really that good or not, because we're online. I don't know. But they were contacting me, and I hadn't reached out to anybody. As far as like, hey, here's a guy that you should have an eye on, or anything. And that still happens. That goes on, but it's a different world now. I mean, they're getting recruited younger and younger, right. and you're trying to forecast what they're going to be as. And we're talking about 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. It's like they haven't even gone through their sophomore year where everything changes. Right. Once they learn to drive and other things. So it's just a different way of doing things. I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's not, I know so-and-so, so I'll get you in at this school. Those days don't exist. Right.
So you do have Rizzo, I believe, is already letter of intent going to USC.
Correct.
Are there any other athletes as well that are college-bound already?
Yeah, so you mentioned Foreman earlier. Alex is signed with St. Louis University. Garen Rizzo is going to USC, as well as Grant Gavell. He's USC bound as well. And then we have a couple other seniors that do want to play at the next level, and we'll see what pans out from them over the next few
sometimes
months.
You go to JC,
yep.
To maybe bounce to a university after that as well. So
correct.
Because El Camino and Harbor, they have pretty decent programs, right, that feed.
Both do a pretty good job, and we've had guys go there in the last couple of years, and a couple that have moved on to play at 4 years as well, from both programs. Even South Bay, Santa Barbara City College is another one where guys like to go. The thing that I do that I have seen a shift in lately is the stigma of a JC, especially on the Hill, has sort of gone away, and especially with the South Bay Promise, they go for free. If you qualify, everyone qualifies, but if you apply and you go through it, and not only is it a free college, but you're also getting all kinds of stuff like a Chromebook and either free books or get to the front of the line with registration in classes. It makes all the sense in the world, especially for a kid that wants to keep playing or isn't quite sure what they want to study. I mean, why go to a 4-year, pay 40, 50, 60 grand just to bounce back? So I'm happy to see that shift.
So when you have an athlete that you know is already committed, is there any restrictions on you or any added pressure to whether it's keeping them healthy or making sure they do certain things to, you know, groom a certain part of their game, preparing them for that next level? Is there anything that changes for you as a coach with that particular athlete when they're already, you know, they're already moving on?
I think there's just having clear communication on both sides, whether that be through them, the player themselves, or their college coach, or whether it be their agent. That's, you know, whatever it is, but at least getting all on the same page. Because kind of like what Alex said earlier, you know, if you're throwing a bullpen for scouts or for this university or this agent on, you know, yesterday, but then we're trying to get you ready to go on Tuesday for, you know, just everybody be able to have clear communication so that way we do what's best for the athlete. I mean, us as coaches, we should always be to look at what's the best for this athlete and where do we need to get them to wherever they need to go. I mean, I think, again, what Alex was talking about is, you know, I used to coach, you know, the Little League guys. I used to go, who wants to play at the next level, right? Okay, then I'm going to coach you guys maybe a little bit tougher, show you things where the other guys, I'm not going to get mad at you because you hit a single to the shortstop and you got, like, you know, hey, good job, when to make contact, you know, so there's a little bit of a difference there. But, you know, for us, I know personally, we don't have any player that's right now that's committed that there's any type of limitation as far as, you know, how many innings we can throw them, or, you know, hey, I want to have, you know, maybe not play every game because, you know, my leg or my arm. So for us, that's great. You know, I've been on teams before where we've had players that are signed somewhere and then they have like that, you know, we call it big leaguing everybody. So then it makes the rest of the team feel like this person's more important than the rest of us. And then that breeds just, you know, the team disbanding and everyone kind of having an I mentality. So at Penn, we just kind of try to develop a we and us. The stronger that, you know, we are together, you know, we can, you know, compete against PV and the Bay League, you know, Costa and Redondo, because there's a lot of talent in the South Bay area. I mean, I see it every day. So for us, it's just, you know, how can we be together?
Any particular athletes that are also committed at Penn at the moment?
Yes, we have. So we have our left fielder Caleb Woodward. He's committed to Trinity out in Texas, along with Reed Woodland. He actually just committed 2 days ago.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was great.
To where?
Trinity as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the two of them, I told them I'd make the Texas trip out there, so they better have the barbecue selection ready. So you know, they're good friends. They've played baseball together growing up, so really happy for those guys to be able to continue their baseball futures together and to have, you know, someone that they can kind of lean on, because, you know, it's tough when you're away from home, and, you know, it's great for those two. And then we have Jack Gold, who's committed to playing at Sonoma College in California, so we're excited about him. And we got a couple others that are looking to get committed here soon, but just always trying to work and help out these guys. I told them, hey, if there's anything I can do, let me know, because from what I've seen from our guys, they've just been a very committed bunch. Great team players, great guys in the locker room, guys you want on a baseball team.
Well, listen, I'm glad that we got you guys together for the first time, started creating this bond that hopefully will go on for years, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on the field battling it out, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of memories that will be forthcoming, so I'm looking forward to that. So thank you for tuning in today, and please subscribe to the channel.